Okay, we're now going to take you to the Greens and the Deputy Leader, Bandt.
Yesterday suggest that 9,000 more Australians will die every year from the heat unless we get global warming under control. And unless we tackle climate change, we're going to see Black Saturday bushfires up to every second year in Victoria, and a doubling of the kind of fire days that New South Wales is seeing at the moment. Faced with the biggest ever threat to the Australian way of life, Tony Abbott is failing in the first duty of a Prime Minister, which is to protect the Australian people. In fact, Tony Abbott is a climate change criminal, and I hope that the Labor factional henchmen won't aid and abet him by voting to repeal this country's clean energy laws. The Greens are extraordinarily proud of what we achieved in the last Parliament, passing world-leading climate change legislation. The Greens will stand steadfast to protect the Australian people from the climate change criminality of Tony Abbott. Australia stands to become the only country in the world that's repealed climate change legislation, and we will not let Tony Abbott do that, and we hope that Labor also stands firm.
Are there any conditions under which you would support some form of a repeal of the carbon tax?
We've been very clear in going to the election that we will vote to maintain the current legislation. We are not going to vote to water down the legislation or to repeal it, as Tony Abbott wants to do. We have a very clear mandate from the Australian people who voted for the Greens to vote to keep up the pressure on Tony Abbott and to make sure that we have world-leading climate change legislation. So no, not going to vote to assist Tony Abbott in trying to repeal it or water it down.
What do you think of the coalition's tactics here, and do you think that the Greens might face a backlash from consumers wanting a reduction in power prices?
Well, what would you rather? That big polluters pay for their pollution, it goes a little bit on the energy bill and you get some compensation for it, and perhaps you have to pay a bit more each year, or Black Saturday bushfires every 2 years. I mean, this is about protecting the Australian way of life, making sure that when you go camping at the end of the year over Christmas holidays, you don't have to worry about bushfires wherever you go. It's about making sure that you're going to be able to take the kids and grandkids fishing in the years to come, and that the oceans haven't acidified. It's worth us taking action now in order to protect the Australian way of life, and I think most people understand that.
What do you think about sort of talk of potentially taking the country to a double dissolution, and also talk that the government might have to pay back $2 billion to polluters if they were to sell back their carbon credits?
Well, on the second point, it's clear that Tony Abbott is doing the bidding of the big polluters. In fact, he's quite happy to now talk about paying them money back, and now he's potentially going to be in negotiations with Clive Palmer about giving even more money back to some of the world's biggest polluters. That's not the way we should be going, and that's what awaits people in Australia if Tony Abbott gets his way. At the moment, the polluters pay, and everyday Australians get compensation. It's going to be the other way around. If Tony Abbott gets his way, he's going to take money out of the pockets of Australian families and give that money to big polluters.
Finally, the coalition set a 100-day deadline to re-establish the ABCC. Are the Greens going to support that legislation, and do you think there's any way that the government can meet that deadline?
Look, this is a fundamental question about the rule of law and about whether
The Greens Deputy Leader, Bandt, they're using some strong language indeed about Tony Abbott, calling him a climate change criminal, expressing his hope that the Labor Party factional henchmen won't in the end side with him in repealing the carbon tax. As I was saying before,